What are the stages of development according to Winnicott? To understand this question, we must first understand the man behind it, Donald Winnicott, a British pediatrician and psychoanalyst whose work reshaped how we think about infancy, motherhood, and emotional development. Winnicott was not interested in abstract theory detached from real life. He spent decades observing mothers and babies. He worked with children who struggled emotionally. And from those observations, he proposed something both simple and profound: a child does not develop alone. Development unfolds in relationship, especially in the presence of what he famously called the good enough mother. According to Winnicott, human development moves through three major psychological stages: subjective omnipotence, objective reality, and independence. Each stage builds upon the previous one, and each stage depends heavily on the quality of early caregiving. Let us walk through them carefully. The first stage is subjective omnipotence. In the earliest weeks and months of life, the infant does not experience the world as separate from themselves. There is no clear boundary between me and not me. When the baby feels hunger and milk appears, it does not feel like something external has responded. Instead, it feels as though the baby has created the milk through desire. The world seems to obey the infant's needs. This is what Winnicott called subjective omnipotence, the illusion that one's wishes create reality. Now, this may sound like a fantasy state, but for Winnicott, this illusion is not a mistake. It is essential. A sensitive mother, or primary caregiver, adapts almost perfectly to the infant's needs in the beginning. She feeds when the baby is hungry, comforts when distressed, warms when cold. Because she responds so closely and consistently, the infant experiences a powerful sense of control and safety. Why is this important? Because this early illusion builds trust. It builds the foundation of being. The child develops a sense that existence is safe, that needs will be met, that life is reliable. Without this stage, the infant may feel chaos instead of security. So the good enough mother does not shatter this illusion too early. She allows it, but she does not maintain it forever. Which brings us to the second stage, objective reality. As the infant grows, the mother gradually reduces her perfect adaptation. She cannot always respond instantly. There are small frustrations, a delay in feeding, a moment before comfort arrives. These small, manageable frustrations introduce the child to an important truth: the world exists independently. Milk does not magically appear, it comes from someone. Comfort is given by another person. The mother is separate, the world is separate. This transition from subjective omnipotence to objective reality is delicate. If it happens too abruptly, through neglect or inconsistency, the infant may experience anxiety or fragmentation. But if it happens gradually, the child begins to tolerate frustration. They begin to recognize other people as real, independent beings. Here, Winnicott introduces another powerful idea: the transitional object. You may have seen it: a blanket, a soft toy, a piece of cloth a child refuses to sleep without. For Winnicott, this object exists between the child's inner world and outer reality. It helps bridge the gap between subjective illusion and objective truth. It represents comfort, but it is also separate from the child. Through this stage, the child begins to relate rather than control. They start to understand that love involves another person, someone outside themselves. And finally, the third stage, independence. Independence, in Winnicott's theory, does not mean isolation. It does not mean emotional detachment. Rather, it means the capacity to exist as a whole self in a world of other whole selves. By this stage, the child has internalized the reliability of the caregiver. They carry within them a stable sense of security. They can tolerate absence. They can play alone without feeling abandoned. They can form relationships without losing themselves. Winnicott believed that true independence grows from dependence. It is not forced, it is not rushed. It emerges naturally when earlier stages are successfully navigated. If subjective omnipotence builds trust and objective reality builds recognition of others, then independence builds authentic selfhood. And this is where Winnicott's emphasis on the good enough mother becomes central. He did not say perfect mother. In fact, perfection would be harmful. The mother must fail, but fail gradually, gently, and appropriately. Her early deep attunement allows the infant to feel powerful and secure. Her gradual withdrawal teaches resilience. Her consistent presence allows independence to grow without fear. In this way, development is not about pushing a child toward autonomy. It is about supporting dependence long enough that autonomy becomes safe. So, what are the stages of development according to Winnicott? First, subjective omnipotence, where the infant experiences the illusion that their needs create reality, supported by a deeply attuned caregiver. Second, objective reality, where gradual frustration introduces the truth of separateness and the child begins to relate to others as independent beings. And third, independence, where the individual develops a stable, authentic self capable of being alone and being in relationship without losing inner security. Winnicott's insight feels almost like a quiet revelation. We do not become strong by being hardened too early. We become strong because someone once held the world steady for us. And perhaps that is why his theory still resonates today. In a world that often rushes children toward independence, Winnicott reminds us that dependence is not weakness. It is the soil from which true selfhood grows. For Chronicles of Legends, this is not merely psychology, it is legacy. Winnicott's stages are not just developmental milestones. They are a map of how trust, reality, and identity are formed in the earliest human relationship. And in understanding these stages, we begin to understand something deeper, that the foundation of every independent adult once rested in the arms of someone who was simply good enough.